Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the profound, multi-systemic impact of body mass index on human reproduction. We are going to take a fascinating journey, moving all the way from cellular biology and ovulatory pathways right up to clinical IVF outcomes. There is a lot to unpack here, so let's jump right in.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the BMI spectrum. Second, ovulation and egg quality. Third, IVF success and miscarriage. Fourth, clinical and surgical risks. And finally, preconception weight strategies.
Section 1. The BMI spectrum. Setting the baseline.
So, baseline metabolism actually has a profound systemic impact on reproductive health. Think of a normal BMI, that 18.5 to 24.9 range, as your body's absolute sweet spot. It provides an optimal physiological benchmark for endocrine balance and endometrial receptivity. But what happens when we move away from that center? Well, falling into the underweight category with a BMI under 18.5 introduces a complete energy deficiency and anovulation. Basically, the body just stops releasing eggs altogether. On the flip side, moving into the overweight category gradually increases the time it takes to conceive, and as we shift into obesity, meaning a BMI of 30 or higher, we start seeing profound hormonal shifts, severe insulin resistance, and impaired egg quality. The key takeaway here, moving too far in either direction away from that normal range introduces some severe physical and hormonal adaptations that really compromise a person's reproductive potential.
Section 2. Ovulation and egg quality. The cellular hurdles.
You might be wondering, how exactly does elevated BMI disrupt ovulation? Well, there are three primary pathways at work here. First up is endocrine shifting. It's absolutely crucial to view adipose tissue, or body fat, not just as passive storage, but as an active endocrine organ. It actually acts like a rogue hormone factory, converting androgens to estrogens. This negative feedback scrambles the brain's pituitary signals and causes chronic anovulation. Second, we have insulin resistance. When insulin sensitivity drops, the body produces less sex hormone-binding globulin, or SHB. Because of that drop, free circulating androgen levels spike, which effectively halts normal follicular maturation. And third, lipotoxicity. Systemic inflammatory cytokines, which are essentially chemical stress signals sent out by the body, trigger major cellular stress right inside the ovarian follicle microenvironment. Put these three factors together, and the ovarian environment becomes incredibly hostile to healthy egg assembly.
To really grasp this, let's break fertility down into two separate battlegrounds, the seed and the soil. On one side, representing the seed, we have oocyte and embryo quality. High fat reserves cause lipotoxic stress, and that literally leads to mitochondrial damage within the follicle. It also increases the risk of aneuploidy, meaning an abnormal number of chromosomes, and causes cleavage failure during early embryo development. But then, look at the other side, the soil, or the endometrium. Elevated BMI creates entirely independent barriers in the uterus. We know this for a fact, because even when obese recipients use perfectly healthy donor eggs from normal-weight individuals, they still experience reduced implantation success. The elevated BMI actually alters gene expression and blunts decidualization, meaning the uterine lining struggles to prepare itself for pregnancy, blocking a healthy placenta from attaching. So it's a true two-front challenge.
Section 3. IVF success and miscarriage. The hard data.
Now, let's look at the actual clinical data, and keep in mind there are real hopeful patients behind every single one of these statistics. If we treat the normal weight category as our 100% baseline for live birth potential in IVF, we see a really severe stepwise decline as body mass increases. Moving into the overweight category drops the potential slightly to 91%, but once we enter obese class I, it falls sharply to 63%. Class 2 drops down to 39%, and for obese class 3, which is a BMI of 40 or higher, the live birth potential drops to a mere 32% compared to that baseline.
And unfortunately, compounding the difficulty of achieving that initial pregnancy is a growing probability of pregnancy loss before 24 weeks. For patients at a normal weight, the base miscarriage risk sits at 11.3%. For obese class I and II, that risk grows to 14.8%. And for severe obesity, class 3 and above, the risk jumps to 20.3%. The big takeaway here is that this progressive risk is largely driven by that independent endometrial resistance, that soil issue we just talked about.
Actually, even the very first step of IVF, attempting to stimulate the ovaries, becomes incredibly challenging. Excess adiposity impairs the way therapeutic medications are distributed in the body.
This pharmacokinetic impact means patients require significantly higher doses of medications, and sadly, these higher doses often yield poorer responses, more canceled cycles, and fewer retrieved eggs. Plus, pumping in those higher medication profiles means the clinical team has to watch the patient like a hawk because it increases the rates of hyperstimulation syndrome, or OHSS, which is a very painful condition where the ovaries swell.
Section 4. Clinical and surgical risks, the physical reality.
Let's mentally step inside the procedure room for a second, because the physical reality for the clinical team is intense. Elevated adipose tissue acts as a literal physical barrier. First, you get poor ultrasound resolution. The sound waves are actually scattered by the layers of fat, making it incredibly tough to measure the follicles accurately. Second, egg retrieval becomes downright hazardous. Ovaries are often displaced superiorly, meaning they get pushed higher up and out of reach, which heavily increases the risk of vascular puncture or tissue injury during the collection. And third, anesthetic complexity. What should be simple outpatient sedation becomes critical because upper airway restriction significantly increases the breathing risks for the patient.
Section 5. Preconception weight strategies, the action plan.
Okay, I know those biological and clinical realities are heavy, but here is the incredible news. We have a highly actionable, evidence-based roadmap to restore balance before even starting an IVF cycle. A supervised caloric deficit of just 500 to 750 calories a day ensures nutritional balance while promoting safe weight loss. Pair that with about 150 minutes of moderate active movement a week to boost tissue insulin response, and here's the real game changer. Achieving just a modest 5 to 10% weight loss is clinically proven to restore normal menstrual rhythms and spontaneous ovulation. That is huge. Finally, for severe cases where the BMI is over 40, metabolic surgery should absolutely be considered prior to IVF, keeping in mind a 12 to 18-month recovery window.
This really represents a massive, empowering shift from clinical risk to proactive health. Clinically supported weight management programs yield wildly positive outcomes, proving that optimizing health before stimulation is incredibly effective. It reminds us that sometimes prioritizing metabolic surgery and allowing for that vital recovery window might just be the absolute best first step a patient can take to preserve and protect their future IVF success.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, absolutely crucial thought to reflect on. How might a brief, dedicated preconception pause to focus on metabolic health entirely redefine the trajectory and ultimate success of an IVF journey? Taking the time to heal the systemic environment first could quite literally make all the difference in the world. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.